The chains rattled. Not weakly, not pitifully, no, with a sound like thunder over iron hills. The alien guards froze. He was old. Gray-bearded, one eye half closed from a bruise swelling over his brow. Wrinkled skin stretched over muscles gone lean with age. His arms were bound behind his back, stripped of armor, his tattered uniform more blood than cloth now. He should have looked broken. But he didn't. Not to the Crothy. Captain Jorek tilted his head, for eyes narrowing with something between amusement and disbelief. "You're the one they sent?" The human didn't answer. He stood still, breathing slow and deep, despite the collar digging into his neck and the cuff lashes looped into the bone of his forearms. Jorek stepped closer, claws ticking across the metal deck. "Do you know where you are, fleshling?" No response. The old man simply raised his head and smiled. Jorek flinched. Only for a second. But in that instant, every predator's instinct he'd ever honed on the hunting moons of Sereth lit up like a burning warning flare. The other Crothy noticed too. They glanced at each other. All 6 guards. Each was armed. Talon staves, plasma sidearms, hooked gauntlets, kinetic backup blades. The human had none of these. He was naked but for the rags and chains. So why did the air feel like it was growing thinner? Why did the silence press like the moment before the storm? The human finally spoke. His voice was low, graveled, and calm, too calm for a man in chains. "You think you've captured something weak." Jorek's upper mandibles twitched. "You are weak." "No," said the man. "You just don't understand what you're holding." The old captain took one slow step forward. The guards snapped their weapons to the ready, but he didn't flinch. The chains clanked. The cuffs dug deeper. Blood pooled on the deck beneath him. He didn't care. He kept talking. "You've stalked prey across galaxies. Crushed primitive species. Terrorized the unarmed. And now you've taken me. You think I'm the prize. The trophy. The last of the resistance." Jorek laughed. "You are the last. Earth burns. Your ships lie in ruins. You're a relic of an extinguished fire. The war is over." The human's eyes burned brighter. "Oh, the war is just beginning. And you're not ready for it." The laughter that followed was unanimous. All 6 guards joined in. Even the ship's AI pulsed the ambient lighting in mockery. A broken old man threatening a star-faring war species? It was absurd. They had conquered a dozen worlds. Their bone sails darkened orbit after orbit. Their war chants echoed through vacuum and fire. But then the lights flickered. Just once. A glitch. Nothing more. Except the old man stopped smiling. And said, "You are predators. But we are apex predators." And he leaned forward, whispering a phrase that triggered every cold instinct in a warrior's heart. "Now let me show you why." 24 hours earlier, aboard the same vessel, the Crothy Dreadfong, orbiting the ashes of Europa Base 7, Fleet Command had received an unusual order. One word. One name. Deliver him alive. No species ever ordered humans delivered alive. Not anymore. Too dangerous. Too unpredictable. Even Crothy doctrine forbade it unless under direct command from the High Brood. Jorek had questioned the transmission source. It came from the Apex Vault, encoded under Omega Black Protocol. That was reserved for threats classified as Origin Class. There were only 3 of those on record. All 3 were human. Jorek had laughed back then too. He's old. He'll fold like the rest. But something strange had happened even during capture. His team had found the man sitting alone inside a shattered bunker, meditating amid corpses, Crothy corpses. Not one pulse rifle in sight. No explosives. No drones. Just bones and torn chitin everywhere. The old man had opened his eyes when they approached. They thought they had him surrounded. Until their comms died. Then their sight. Then 3 of the 6 commandos stopped breathing, simultaneously. Jorek had barely managed to get the collar around his neck after flooding the room with nerve foam. The human hadn't fought. He just watched. Watched the others collapse. Watched the survivors panic. Watched Jorek stare into eyes that weren't ancient at all. They were battlefield eyes. Quiet. Endless. Unblinking. Now back in the present, that same man stood chained aboard the most advanced Crothy warship ever built, surrounded by firepower meant to raise planets. And he didn't look worried. He looked bored. "You're not scared?" asked Jorek again, voice quiet this time. The old man chuckled, and for a moment it sounded fatherly. Like a laugh over a campfire. The warmth of a man who had already made peace with death, and found it wanting. "I buried fear a long time ago," he said. "Somewhere on Proxima Prime. Or was it the edge of Orion's tier? Doesn't matter. What matters is you should be scared. The lights flickered again. Twice this time. The guards turned, instinctively scanning the walls, HUD spiking with sensor anomalies. The AI voice buzzed in warning. Unauthorized signal detected. What signal? Jorik barked. Unknown origin. Spreading through Comdeck, engineering, weapons control. The old man tilted his head. Ah, right on time. Time for what? Jorik snarled. The human raised his eyes, and all four of Jorik's pupils contracted. Time for you to learn how we hunt. On the bridge, chaos erupted. Systems locked. Auto turrets went offline. Gravity surged, then inverted. The crew began to float, screaming. The emergency override failed. Biolocks shut every door. Somewhere deep in the ship's belly, a maintenance drone twitched, then exploded. Its debris spelled one word in Terran Morse. Run. Inside the cell, the cuffs dropped. No key. No override. They just fell, like they'd never existed. The guards pointed their weapons too late. The old man stepped forward, eyes glowing with neural sync lines. You took me prisoner? He whispered. No. I brought myself aboard. One guard lunged. The human moved. There were no wasted motions. No war cries. Just speed, precision, and finality. In 4 heartbeats, all 6 Krathi lay dead. The chains? Still on the floor. Jorik stood frozen. He hadn't moved. He couldn't move. What are you? The old man stepped close until Jorik could smell iron and ozone and something else. The scent of blood spilled over centuries. I'm the whisper your ancestors ignored. The edge behind every blade. The shadow between your victories. The reason every empire before you died screaming in the dark. He leaned in, his voice a calm, lethal lullaby. I'm human. And you've made a mistake. Far above, in deep space, an unmarked vessel blinked into existence. Still. Silent. Watching. Inside, dozens of operators leaned over consoles, eyes fixed on the Krathi dreadnought unraveling like a dying star. At the helm, a woman in a black coat whispered, Extraction confirmed. Operation Apex proceeds. Let the galaxy watch. Jorik backed away, each step unsteady. The human didn't pursue. He simply straightened his posture, shoulders square, spine like iron, face unreadable. The blood on his hands wasn't fresh. It was memory, etched in his skin, painted from old wars. I asked you once, he said, tone flat as vacuum, if you knew what you were holding. Jorik shook, mandibles twitching uncontrollably. Now behind the human the cell walls groaned. One by one the armored doors along the detention deck hissed open. Not all the cells were empty. Some held Krathi soldiers. Mutineers. War criminals. Some were barely more than beast. But none of them moved. None dared. They'd seen the cameras. They'd watched the old man execute 6 elite guards with motion so fluid it defied gravity. And now their cells were open too. You're trying to spark a prison riot? Jorik spat, claw inching for his blade. The old man turned slightly, voice still low. No. I'm giving them a choice. He walked down the corridor. As he passed each cell, the creatures inside pressed themselves back. Not in fear of violence, but in awe. Like animals sensing a storm. A predator without equal. Some fell to their knees. Others whispered his name in 20 different tongues. Reaver. Old Wolf. Ashmaker. Jorik's breath caught. Those weren't names. They were warnings, passed in terrified code across war-torn systems. Always attached to stories too wild to believe. A human ghost who appeared behind enemy lines. Who never used ships or fleets. Who just arrived and ended things. He had thought they were myth. He had thought wrong. Back on the bridge of the Dreadfang, klaxons shrieked and lights died, one by one. The command crew screamed into dead headsets, frantically trying to reroute control. Auxiliary thrusters offline. Reactor cooling systems failing. Weapons grid empty? How the hell is it empty? Then came the override. A voice, not theirs, filled the bridge. This ship now belongs to the Apex Protocol. And that same calm voice, familiar now, followed. You never asked how I got aboard. Every Krathi froze. Every officer turned to the admiral, whose scales had paled to death white. They didn't know it yet, but they were already dead. 1 week earlier. Deep inside a Terran intelligence bunker buried beneath Europa's South Pole, the Apex Protocol was reactivated for the first time in 89 years. The signal came encrypted, tied to a specific biomarker, Subject 7. Only 3 people in the galaxy knew what that code meant. When the last war ended, technically, the humans hadn't trusted the ceasefire. They never did. Because humans didn't just fight for territory. They fought to end threats completely. And when that wasn't possible, they didn't wait for war to start again. They planted it. Captain Elias Rourke had volunteered for burial. Not literal but strategic. He was a living contingency. He'd agreed to go dark, erasing his record, removing his name from command logs, deleting himself from every planetary system. In exchange, the Council gave him one unspoken directive. If they come for us again, end them from inside. So when the Crothi thought they'd captured him, they hadn't. He'd entered. By design. Back aboard the ship, Rourke stepped into the central chamber. Bodies lay in every corridor behind him, none killed unnecessarily. But all silenced. The lights now obeyed him. The air hummed to his pulse. And at the center of the command nexus, Admiral Zithrock waited, flanked by elite guards 20 in number, each chosen from the brood's inner nest. "You will not leave this ship alive," Zithrock growled. Rourke gave him that same tired smile. "I didn't come here to leave." He didn't raise a weapon. Didn't even clench a fist. Instead he blinked. And the ship's lights stuttered. Then 20 humans, real humans, decloaked from stealth armor, rifles humming, blades drawn. Operators. Apex Division. Ghosts like Rourke. Every one of them surgically inserted by a week's worth of fabricated signals and compromised Crothi logistics. They had been waiting in the walls. One of them turned to Rourke, nodding. "All systems locked. We're home." The firefight was surgical. Precise. The guards didn't stand a chance. One by one they dropped, tactical nerves failing, formations shattered. These weren't just soldiers they faced. They were predators trained to hunt other predators. Not in war zones. In thrones. In dens. Admiral Zithrock lunged, double-bladed halberd slicing through the air. He was fast, faster than his size should allow. Faster than gravity allowed. He'd fought humans before. Survived them. But Rourke had stopped surviving long ago. He moved. There wasn't a parry. No block. Just a shift of weight, a ripple of red, and then Zithrock fell, both his weapon and his left arm rolling away on the floor. Rourke stepped over him. Looked down. "You wanted a trophy. A symbol." He crouched. "Now you'll be one." The Admiral tried to speak, but all he could do was gurgle blood. His eyes showed something deeper than fear. Recognition. With the dreadnought under control, Rourke accessed the main relay. A burst transmission, raw, unencrypted, beamed out into open space. It contained one image. Jerk. In chains. Weeping. Kneeling beside the fallen Crothi Admiral. And in the foreground, Rourke. Standing alone. Unarmed. "Come." The message attached. "You wanted to show the galaxy who rules. So did we." Within 12 hours, the Crothi outer colonies began broadcasting emergency orders to withdraw from Terran space. Within 24, 6 slave races initiated open rebellion. By the end of the week, half the Empire's supply routes were collapsing. And the humans? They didn't claim territory. They just disappeared again. Like ghosts in the dark. Back inside the dreadnought, Rourke watched the stars drift through the viewport. The operators moved in silence behind him, extracting data, planting collapse orders in every subsystem. "Sir," one of them said quietly. "Message from High Command." Rourke didn't turn. "Read it." They say, "Excellent work, Reaver. We weren't sure if you'd survive stasis. Good to have you back." Pause. "Also," the soldier hesitated. "They ask if you want retirement." A name again. Rourke smiled faintly, eyes on the stars. "Peace is earned when the galaxy no longer fears humans. Not before." He turned slowly. "Tell them the Apex still hunts." The operator saluted. "Yes, sir." Outside, the Dreadfang's engines fired, but not in retreat. Its course now aimed at a secret graveyard of Crothi fleet caches. The dreadnought itself was now a weapon. A ghost ship with a human captain, and every alien species would soon hear one terrifying truth. He let himself be caught. And they would wonder, how many more were already aboard their ships? How many ghosts had they taken prisoner? How many names had they mocked without realizing? They were speaking legends? The Dreadfang's engines cut through black like a knife through silence. She was a Crothi super dreadnought, 14 kilometers of alloy, power and arrogance. But now her hull whispered to new ghosts, Terran operators reconfiguring her from within. In the command chamber, Rourke stood like a monument. No one spoke unless necessary. But then something unusual happened. A light, soft, blue, old, blinked in the corner of the chamber. Not part of the Crothi systems. Not even human tech. It was ancient. Buried. Rourke's eyes narrowed. Where the hell did that signal come from? The operator nearest to the panel, a woman in an obsidian stealth rig, leaned in. It's encrypted, but with Terran ciphers. Pre-Earth fall era. Sir, this isn't from command. Rourke stepped closer. Put it through. On my node only. The operator hesitated, then obeyed. The feed clicked. A voice, raspy, bone-dry, old as exile, filtered through his comm. Reaver, if you're hearing this, it means the chain has broken. He froze. No one called him that anymore. Not even high command. Only one person had ever used that voice, that word, in that tone. They called you Legend Elias. But we both know what you are. You're a promise. The message continued, slow and full of weight. Protocol Omega Apex is now active. Your next targets are not Crothy. They're older. Hidden. Buried in the fold space vaults beneath Veltorin. You have 48 hours. Then the vault burns. Do not trust command. Do not trust the mission logs. Follow the fire in your bones. You were born to end empires, not serve them. The message ended. The room was silent again. Operators watched Rourke carefully. He said nothing for a long moment, then turned, eyes harder than the vacuum outside. We're changing course. Veltorin, the dark vaults. Veltorin was forbidden even by Crothy standards. A gas giant with a dead moon that had once been a city. Now it was a scar, a frozen mausoleum orbiting a bloated beast of atmosphere and pressure. Under that moon's surface lay the fold space vaults, sealed chambers of weaponry so ancient, their origin predated even the First War. Weapons that could cut stars. Weapons the humans had once promised never to seek. But promises only matter if the other side plays fair. And the Crothy hadn't. Rourke stood at the Dreadnought's forward platform as Veltorin rose into view. Drop stealth. Full thrust. We're going through. The operators didn't hesitate. Alarms across the outer system began lighting up. Crothy sentry beacons activated, an old defense grid awakening. They'd never imagined anyone human would come here. But the Dreadfong was their own ship. It answered their challenge codes. And Rourke? He'd already anticipated their defense vectors. The Dreadnought broke orbit at a sharp arc, dive bombing toward the moon's equatorial canyon. Plasma shields peeled open space ahead, carving a line of fire straight through the ice crust. They landed hard. The vault gates loomed. Black. Featureless. Sealed for over 5 centuries. And now they opened. Just for him. Inside, the light was impossible. Blue and red, stitched into the air like living strands. The vaults weren't built. They were grown, out of logic and madness, shaped by builders who had vanished long before Earth knew stars. Sir, one operator whispered, staring in awe, these weren't just weapons storage. This is a factory. An evolving system. It's still building. Rourke nodded. And it's about to finish. They followed the corridor into the central chamber. At its heart sat a single sphere, massive, pulsing like a lung taking its first breath. Above it, Crothy glyphs floated. But Rourke's eyes weren't on the glyphs. They were on the Terran runes beneath them. Koritin. The humans hadn't just sealed this place. They'd built it with the Crothy. Flashback. 80 years ago. The war was ending. Or, more truthfully, collapsing under its own weight. A secret was brokered. A ceasefire, not to save lives but to bury something too dangerous to exist. A weapon they had made together. One designed not just to destroy enemies, but to rewrite them. Language, biology, instinct. A logic virus for species. It was called the Howling Code. Once activated, it could infiltrate any Crothy mind. Not to kill. To unmake identity. To overwrite their predator instincts with something else. Obedience. Silence. Or madness. Humanity had sworn never to use it. But they had also left it with a key. And that key was Elias Rourke. Present. The vault pulsed. Ready. One of the operators checked the sphere's status. Code chain complete. Activation possible in 92 seconds. Rourke didn't give the order immediately. He turned to the others. You know what this means. One stepped forward. If we use it, there's no war. No fight. They'll never hunt again. Another added, but it's genocide. A cultural erasure. Rourke's voice was quiet. No. It's evolution. We're not killing them, we're breaking the predator instinct. Giving them the one thing they never gave others. Choice. Silence fell. Then one by one they nodded. The countdown began. But they weren't alone. A fleet dropped into orbit. Not Crothy. Terran. Black holes. Red beacons. The High Command. They had tracked the activation. A voice hailed them, Admiral Sorella Vance, Rourke's old comrade, now seated at the head of the Terran Oversight Council. Rourke, power down the vault. We can't let this fall into open hands. You were never meant to activate it. He didn't flinch. You made me the key. That was a threat, not a promise. He stepped toward the console. Her voice sharpened. You do this, you're not saving us. You're becoming what they feared. He looked at his hand, scarred, steady, calloused from 100 wars. Then said calmly, they should fear more. The code fired. Light exploded from the sphere, silently, like a nova in slow motion. It passed through walls, through starship hulls, through species, across light years, across blood, across instinct. The Krathi in their empire screamed. Then they stopped, because something inside them cracked. And through that crack came something new. Not submission, but doubt. And to a species built on predation, doubt was death. Rourke stood exhausted. The vault dimmed behind him, but his eyes burned bright. One of the operators stepped up. Sir, command has gone dark. They're recalibrating positions across the rim. Intel says the Krathi fleets are disbanding. He nodded slowly. Another spoke. And the Reaver? What now? He turned to them. Soft voice. Old fire. Now. We go find the rest of the old myths. And remind them. Earth doesn't send armies anymore. We send apex predators. The Dreadfang lifted from Veltorin's moon on thrusters no longer under Krathi control. The howling code had been released. The vault's ancient circuits dimmed as if exhaling after millennia. Beneath its surface, everything had changed. The Krathi weren't dead. But something core to them, something vital, had been stripped away. Not by force. Not by blood. By a virus that whispered instead of roared. And across the stars, the screams had turned into silence. Not peace. Something deeper. Confusion. Rourke stood on the Dreadnought's command deck as reports streamed in from across former warfronts. Scarun Syndicate disbanded. Their Prime Fong refused to feed. Fleet Sigma 11B surrendered without demands. Entire crews in collective meditation. The predator instinct isn't gone, sir, but it's fractured. Some don't know how to fight anymore. Rourke didn't smile. This wasn't victory. Not in the way most imagined. This was the moment after the storm when everyone's left blinking and breathless, unsure whether they survived, or simply hadn't noticed they were drowning. The Terran High Command fleet still shadowed them from orbit. Watching. Waiting. Inside the Dreadnought, an operator glanced up. Incoming hail, Admiral Vance again. Rourke didn't answer immediately. He stood there in the quiet hum of engines and systems, half human, half alien, all weaponized silence. Then finally. Put her through. Her face appeared on the projection node, older than when he'd last seen her in person. More burdened. And utterly furious. You had no right, Vance said without preamble. No, Rourke replied. I had duty. You released a mind plague. You destroyed a species' foundation. Their culture was built on predation, he cut in. On meat pyramids. On ceremonial hunts of sentience. On consuming sapiens for memory ascension. You were there when we signed the pact. You know what they did to the Yavari. That was decades ago. They still celebrated it. She flinched. The comm line hissed with brief static. Then why now, she asked. Why you? Why not bring this to the council? He stepped closer to the projection, eyes hard. Because the council's built on fear and votes. I'm built on memory and fire. In the outer sectors, ships were moving. Human colonies long thought lost, silent, disavowed, exiled, were lighting up old beacons. Not to war, but to observe. Because everyone in the galaxy now wanted to know. What happens when the apex predators stop playing fair? And Rourke? He was the answer. But he wasn't finished yet. Elsewhere. In the Krathi core system of Belzarn, once a fortress world of obsidian towers and feral skies, the Matriarch Council had convened. They did not argue. They wept. For the first time in recorded history, the Council, apex of domination, of carnage, of thousand-year tradition, sat in silence. And listened. To the voice of a captured scout, a lowborn once ignored, now revered because he did not feel hunger anymore. He only said 2 words before collapsing. The howling stopped. And somewhere in the distance, war drums were burned. Back aboard the Dreadfang, Rourke sat in the captain's chamber, staring at a small relic. A tooth-shaped fragment of bone encased in glass. A memento. from a time when he was just a soldier, not a symbol. It had belonged to a child on the colony of Viral 6. She'd carved it for him after he'd saved her village from a Crothy raising team. She'd been 6 years old. They killed her the next day. That was when something inside him shifted. Not rage. Not even grief. But a direction. A pivot of purpose so sharp it would cut time itself. And now the galaxy had pivoted too. He walked back to the command deck. All systems clear, an operator said. Human systems are standing by for response, but no retaliation so far. Because they're waiting, Rourke said. To see if I go rogue. Are you? The operator asked quietly. Rourke looked out the viewport, where stars drifted like thoughts in the void. No. I'm just finishing what they started. Humanity's reckoning. The transmission was simple. Every known species in the galaxy received it at once. No encryption. No theatrics. Just Rourke. Face calm. Eyes burning. To the sentient species of the known galaxy, this is Elias Rourke. Earthborn. Once soldier. Now voice. The Crothy hunted for pleasure. Conquered for glory. They wore suffering like a crown. We asked for peace. They laughed. We fought. They escalated. We survived. So they tried to erase us. So we gave them a gift, doubt. They are not dead. They are not erased. They have simply been reminded that evolution does not favor strength. It favors adaptability. You called us violent, called us monsters, called us unpredictable. You were right. Because we are not predators by instinct. We are apex predators by choice. Remember that before you force us to choose again. The galaxy responded with silence. Then whispers. Then fear. But not of war. Of change. Because the apex predator of old didn't scream. Didn't brag. Didn't lash out. It simply moved. Quietly. With intent. Later. The Dreadfong didn't return to Earth. Rourke vanished into the void. Some say he went to the exile clusters, where the first Terran offshoots were born in rogue biology labs. Others say he sought the forgotten cradle, where the true origin of humanity was buried under oceans of stars. But one message encoded in a dying signal near the fold space rift said this. We are not a species. We are a ripple. A legend. A knife passed down from blood to blood. And when the stars grow arrogant, we remind them. End of final section. Satellite-like stories where humanity redefines what it means to be feared, respected, and mythologized? Then hit subscribe to the Void Narratives. Every week we drop fresh, long-form HFY tales that stare into the abyss and grin right back. Next week, you'll meet a war criminal human exiled to a prison moon, where he finds something older than the galaxy and hungrier than war. Until then, never stop being the apex.